What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamecite Chronicles, the console gaming podcast where we sit down each and every week to talk about our favorite hobby, video games. I'm your host, Bonfire, and this is episode number 29. I want to thank you all for tuning in last week. Downloads are going great on podcast services. YouTube's a little weird. I don't know. My channel really is kind of probably dead over there since I took so many years off from when I was regularly posting content to now getting back into the game a little bit. But either way, a few of you are tuning in and it's great. So I really do appreciate you guys' love, kindness, and support for the show. It means the world sitting behind this microphone. So thank you. Truly. Thank you guys. Hope you've all had a great week. Got some video games in. This week kind of flew by for me. And now that it's the weekend, well, and actually I'm recording on Sunday morning, so we're mid-weekend. I'm recording a little later this week, but it is a beautiful Sunday morning, and I got my latte next to me because I just woke up, if I'm being honest, and man, it's tasty, let me tell you. It's good. It's good stuff. But by the time this episode goes live, it's college football, baby. College football is back, and that's exciting. Now, as some of you know, I'm an Oregon Ducks fan. We played Georgia yesterday, and it was rough. I expected to lose the game, but not that bad. So that was kind of a bummer. But, man, this is my favorite time of year, I have to say, because you start to see a little crisp in the air. Some of my favorite beer comes out, which is Oktoberfest beer. And actually, I think I mentioned this, I got a giant official Oktoberfest mug from Costco. And that's what I enjoyed yesterday. So that certainly helped the game. But then you got college football. NFL is going to start next week. Man, it's good. It's just good. I truly do love this time of year, and it is beautiful here in the Pacific Northwest. Now, just a friendly reminder and a little plug that I did start a YouTube short series sharing some of my favorite video game collectibles from my collection. Just posted episode 2. Sharing a rare Super Mario 3DS that I have. So be sure to check that out. Subscribe to the channel. Would really appreciate that. And for those that are new and uninitiated to the show, remember, the best way you can support the show is to leave a rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. Drop us a comment on YouTube or Rumble. I do post all my YouTube videos go over to Rumble, including the new shorts videos. So if you'd prefer that platform, which is really cool, actually, check it out. Go to rumble.com, search for Gamecite, and you should find me over there. You can join me over on Locals, the Gamecite Chronicles.locals.com. You can also listen to the podcast over there. Follow me on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. And remember to catch new episodes each and every week on Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, for this week's show, it was a little slower in kind of the gaming news world because it's the aftermath of Gamescom, but there was some news around Xbox that have come out, specifically around Call of Duty and their plans with, Activision Blizzard post acquisition, which is kind of obvious, but there are a few tidbits in there that I really wanted to touch on and dive into, amongst a few other kind of smaller stories that have popped up that I thought it'd be fun to chat about. So we got a new Assassin's Creed game that was officially announced. Konami has teased a big reveal for the upcoming Tokyo Game Show. And Halo Infinite. It's got some controversy as they released their upcoming roadmap through, I think it was June 2023. So we're going to dive into that. And we'll probably spend quite a bit of time on that because I'm a big Halo fan. And so this is interesting. Definitely some interesting stuff. But before we get into that, we got to talk about the games that we're playing. And as always, remember to write in and let me know what games you're playing so we can get that incorporated into this segment of the show. But for me, 2 games. Been playing 2 games here lately. One, I finished Live Alive. Finally finished this game. And I beat it at around 28 hours. And overall, I have to say it is an awesome game. What a great experience. Now, as I mentioned last week, as I started to dive into the last, few chapters of the game, after you play all the 7 characters, the main 7 character stories. I'm not going to spoil anything of that, but I will say this: it does all come together, and in a pretty cool way. So I'll leave it at that. The other thing I'll mention here, and it's really kind of my only complaint, albeit very minor, the last chapter, I've kind of felt like there was this big difficulty spike. And part of that was because my characters were under leveled. And I kind of had to grind, not really grind too much, but I did a lot of battling as I was just kind of exploring, the area to reach the kind of soft level cap in the game. So it was really weird because I felt like with this difficulty spike, I was kind of looking online. I was like, is anyone else talking about this? Because I feel like this is just really weird. And I ended up finding a guide to walk you through the last chapter. Because the game opens up quite a bit. And you spend a lot of time. I probably spent the last 9 or 10 hours of the game in the last chapter. Because there's a ton of optional activities to do. And in old school fashion, it doesn't tell you anything. And so there's so much to do, like so much you can do in this last chapter, that I'm really glad actually I found this guide. And one of the things I didn't know is that there are different endings you can get. And there's some, I guess, different dialogue options depending on kind of some of your choices throughout the game. And so that's pretty cool too. Now I will say once I leveled up, it was kind of fun going through the last chapter and just seeing some of my characters just get kind of OP. Like there's some really cool abilities and stuff that you get, and I just really enjoyed that. But again, I gotta say, it's just, I think it's just truly amazing how unique this game is. Because as I mentioned last week, the combat is this constant kind of thread through the game, through each unique story that comes up repeatedly, as well as kind of, all leading up to a final big boss battle of each story. And just how that you have this common thread, but each story is so distinct and unique from the characters and some of the gameplay mechanics. And then to see it all come together in the end is, I think, truly something special. It's really cool. I'm kind of blown away by this game. And again, to think that this game came out so long ago. And I think there are some things that changed, because when I was reading the kind of guide, the walkthrough on the last chapter, they mentioned a couple of minor things that have changed. But I think generally speaking, the game is pretty faithful. And so it's crazy to think about that. Now, as I mentioned with the different endings, thankfully, and halfway unintentionally, just because I was, there's some choices you make throughout the game, I did get the best ending, I believe. So I'm pretty stoked on that. I was happy with the ending I got and the way everything kind of concluded. But I have to say, if you're an RPG fan, seriously, JRPG fans, try this game out. It's absolutely wonderful. And, compared to modern, like Western RPGs and even some of the JRPGs coming out today, it's not that long. Like 28 hours, it's not that long. And so to me, that's perfect. I don't want to spend 40, 60, 100 hours unless it's really worth my time. But this one was certainly worth my time. Gotta say, what a great game. After that, though, I hopped into Inscription on the PS5, and I've played probably about 4 to 5 hours, I think. And I remember hearing folks talk about this game and just how cool it was when it came out. I think it was last year on PC. And so I was super excited to see it come to PlayStation. And it just launched this past August 30th, I think it was. And it was on sale. Like if you pre-ordered it, you get like 10% off, which is nice that they do some of those. But now it's available. I hopped into it. There is a PS3 and a PS4 and PS5 version. So depending on what console you're playing on, make sure you get the right version. And I've seen, and even the game I think the devs kind of tell you this, that don't look up anything about this game. and just jump into it. Similar to when I talked about, this is earlier this year, Doki Doki Literature Club. Don't look at anything, just go into it, just play it. And so that's what I've heard about this game. That's what I've done. And I've tried to avoid, like, even watching gameplay on Twitch, like any spoilers, anything about this game. Just hop in as blind as possible. And that's what I'm doing. It's really interesting. It's a really interesting game. And so it's a roguelite, and it's a card game. It's like this, it's a kind of this horror, very dark setting, like horror light, if you will, because it's not intended to like jump scare, but there's very kind of dark and some might say disturbing imagery. And then it's all about this card game that you're playing against this like mysterious figure in a room. And the card game is kind of cool. It's kind of weird because it's all based on like animals and stuff like that. But there's strategy to it, and I really enjoy that element. Now again, I don't really enjoy like digital card games. I know there's tons of them out there in the gaming world, and I'm not even big on roguelites because I don't like doing the same thing over and over again without a sense of progression. But this game, I don't know, the card game is fun. I enjoy the strategy components to it, and this game isn't overly repetitive to where like you're not doing, it's not like Dead Cells where you can do like a 5-minute run and then you're hopping back into it or something like that. Or even like Spelunky, where you're just a couple minutes or, anything like that. Quick runs. It's not like that where you're going to be doing hundreds of runs, at least in my experience. I've definitely done in the 4 to 5 hours, I don't know, maybe 4 to 5 runs, so a run an hour. I don't know. It's not, don't go into it thinking it's like a super roguelite in that, but you do get a sense of progression. And I like the way the game kind of introduces, as you get kind of deeper into it, deeper into the levels and stuff like that, that there's just kind of some new mechanics, new cards that are introduced, and just kind of new little tidbits and stuff like that. And I did kind of reach the end of the levels and beat the mysterious figure, I guess that you will. And that's where it starts to get a little weird. But I'm just going to leave it at that, because again, I'm not going to spoil anything. I still have much to see this game. And so it's pretty cool, I have to say. It's very unique. And so I'm excited to continue. Actually, I'm hoping I can wrap up this podcast and hop down and continue before the little kid gets up this morning. So we shall see about that. But it's fun. It's fun nonetheless. Other thing I just kind of wanted to mention here is I picked up the red DualSense controller. This is a while ago, actually, like right when it came out. I just never opened it because we were moving and I just never got around to starting using it. But I finally opened it, started using it, and it's fun. I like the red color more than I thought I would. And I got it at the time. This is before they announced like the purple, blue, and pink. When I picked it up, I got it because I didn't want the black one. I was like, black. It just kind of looked boring. So I got the red one. And I really wish I would have waited and got the purple one. I like the purple. And I actually have a purple DualShock 4 that looks just so good. That's like if I use a PlayStation 4 controller, that's the one I use. But it's always fun using a new controller. And I will say the DualSense Edge is on its way. Don't know when. Hopefully this holiday. But I'm going to be picking up that when that comes out. But I don't know. It's just fun using a new controller. And it's nice. And the DualSense is a really, really awesome controller. And the other thing is we have Splatoon 3 coming out next week. So by the time you listen to this, it'll be almost Splatoon 3 time. And I'm excited I plan on picking that up and diving into that. Playing some multiplayer. It's gonna be good. So with that, let's start diving into that. Some news. And the first item I wanted to dive into is that new Assassin's Creed game that was announced. So apparently, new artwork from the upcoming Assassin's Creed leaked online. And Video Games Chronicle, VGC, reported that a Twitter user who I guess previously broke Rainbow Six leaks in the past he published a couple, or this person, I guess I should say, they published some images of the new Assassin's Creed game. And so the game is called Assassin's Creed Mirage, and it kind of looks, the imagery looks Middle Eastern. And when you're kind of looking at it, very sand colored, and the protagonist has kind of very traditional white assassin's clothing and hood, like kind of what we've seen from like the original Assassin's Creed. I'm just kind of getting those style of vibes. But then shortly after, Ubisoft officially announced the game and confirmed the leak. They stated the game's real. It's going to be shown off on September 10th at their Ubisoft Forward. So maybe we'll see what comes out of that. I don't think I'll watch it because again, that's a Saturday. So we'll see. We'll see what I'm doing. Depending on what time it is, maybe I can tune in or just tune in afterwards. So that's when we're actually going to see this game. And then the image they shared on the, I think it's the Ubisoft or Assassin's Creed Twitter account, shows the assassin kind of jumping with his signature wrist blade in the background. And it has, again, the buildings in the background you can see look very Middle Eastern or even potentially Indian when you're kind of looking at it. And I remember there being rumors of an Indian location at some point for Assassin's Creed. So I was thinking maybe that's where it's set. So VGC also reported that, or the rumor as reported by VGC states that the game is smaller in scale and stealth focused rather than RPG focused. So kind of coming back to its roots, which is pretty interesting. This is also apparently the game that started as the Assassin's Creed Valhalla expansion with one of those main characters. So they just decided to turn it into its own game, which kind of makes sense, it being a smaller scale. So again, we'll learn more here next week. And then it goes on to report that the setting is indeed Middle East. So when I was writing this, it's funny because I was speculating, and then as I continued to read the story, they confirmed it. So including Baghdad, and will release in spring of 2023. And I gotta say, dude, it's 2023, like spring of 2023 is just seemingly jam-packed. I think next year is going to be a bonkers year for video games, assuming all this stuff comes out. But I digress on that. So that's it. Assassin's Creed Mirage. Smaller, stealth-focused, not RPG-focused. Pretty interesting stuff, I have to say. And I'm curious, because again, based on what we're reading here, it seems like they're getting back to the original roots. In the way the assassin looks in these images that they shared, it looks like it reminds me of Assassin's Creed 1, the very first game. And I played that for the first time, I want to say back in 2013, maybe 2014. So I mean, it's been a while, obviously, but I played it long after it originally came out. And I played 1 and 2, and the jump to 2 was pretty significant. But this game, I don't know, I'm just coming back to the roots of the first game and maybe thinking they're trying to do something like the first game, but obviously with more modern mechanics, modern gameplay. Getting back to that stealth rather than, all the huge RPG elements that they injected into the later entries, or the more recent entries, I should say. So I'm interested to see this. And, Assassin's Creed, I like the more modern ones, albeit I've only played a little bit of Odyssey, and I've tried out Valhalla. Like, I played the opening, hour or so of the game at a friend's house. But I never, deeply dove into it. They just, on all accounts that I was hearing and reading about these games, with Odyssey and Valhalla, they were just super bloated. And I played about 5 hours of Odyssey, and but it's fun. I love Origins, and I've talked about that before. So I'm always interested to see what's going on with Assassin's Creed, because these games do interest me. I kind of just hop in and out of, every now and then. So we'll see. I like the idea of setting Middle East. Again, it just seems like they're going back to their roots. And so I'm curious to see how they pull it off, how it comes together, and how they seemingly reinvent this franchise again to go from, what it was in the first few games, or actually not few, most of the first games. Very linear. Well, not, I shouldn't say linear. Some of them are linear, some of them are open world. And then, but bringing back stealth. I love the idea of smaller scale. That really appeals to me. Really appeals to me. So we'll see. We shall see about this. I'm very intrigued on this when it gets announced. So September 10th, Ubisoft Forward. The next news item I wanted to touch on is Konami, and they're seemingly teasing a new game. So as reported by GameSpot, I wrote GameStop on the sheet here, my notes here. Anyways, as reported by GameSpot and others, Konami has confirmed that they will unveil a new game from a famous series in the upcoming Tokyo Game Show, which I think is mid or end September for Tokyo Game Show. So it is said that the new games are related to one of its classic franchises. Now, VGC, Video Games Chronicle, also reported that its sources say fans of Silent Hill, Metal Gear Solid, and Castlevania shouldn't get too excited. So presumably, its sources are telling VGC that this is not the new Silent Hill game that's been rumored, or Silent Hill games, I should say, that's been rumored, or the Metal Gear Solid game, even though I think there's a remake rumor of that one as well, and reportedly a Castlevania game in development. So it's not those, apparently. So my question is, like, what does that leave? And so I was actually looking up some of the other Konami franchises, and I pulled a few here, like the bigger ones, because there are quite a few on there that I was like, I have no idea what this is. But the ones that I did recognize that are pretty big, so they have Bomberman, Contra, Frogger, Suikoden, and Zone of Ender, outside of the obviously the big obvious ones. And so going through those, they're already doing a new Bomberman. They've announced it. I believe it's Super Bomberman R2. So they've got that. For Contra, I think it'd be cool to see a new Contra game. I've never really been into Contra, but I know that classic arcade, side scroller, 2D shoot 'em up. It's fun, and I think there's a place for those style of games today. Maybe even a little bit more modernized. I'd love to see it maybe like spice it up, do an isometric style. I think that'd be cool, kind of fun. But even just like a new classic 2D Contra would be, I think that'd be dope, so who knows? But I also think it'd be fun to explore this franchise, maybe even a new way. They could do something like a third-person shooter. Although that might come across too generic, but I think the Contra name would be able to kind of carry that by itself, even though you're just kind of blasting aliens. So who knows? That could be on the table. Frogger, that might be interesting, but I don't even think that IP is relevant anymore. I mean, gosh, I remember playing the original Frogger on the Atari, not the Atari 2600. I think it was the one after that, but the old school Atari. Playing the original Frogger with my grandma at her house, because she had like the original Atari and a bunch of games. And I remember playing Frogger and just loving it. And then I think they came out with a more modern version of Frogger in the PlayStation 1 era. And I remember playing that game and playing it with one of my best friends from high school, which was just awesome. That was so much fun. But again, I don't think there's really been a Frogger game since. Maybe one, but is it even relevant? Like, people even know what Frogger is? So and does that have any resonance to where they would, kind of be teasing it as they're saying it's coming to the Tokyo Game Show? I don't think so. Just that doesn't sit. That doesn't jive. Zone of Ender, I don't think that was, because that was tied, I think, to Kojima too. So I don't think that would be it. So the one I do think it is Suikoden. I could see that being the one, because Square Enix has been killing it with JRPGs. Now I mentioned that because maybe Konami is kind of looking at that success in terms of Square Enix kind of bringing back some of the classic games in their, HD 2D format and saying, we can do that with Suikoden. So maybe they're trying to get in on that, which I think makes sense. And I think there are a lot of old school Suikoden fans that would love to see either, one of the older games being remade or just a new entry into this would be pretty cool. Now, I've never played a Suikoden game. Some of my high school friends, or my best friends growing up, a couple of them were super into Suikoden. Like, they loved it. Oh my gosh, all of them. And they were super into those games. I just never got into them. But I remember, I think for one of my birthdays one year, my mom got me Suikoden 3 on the PlayStation 2. And I wish I would have, I don't know what happened to that copy of the game, because I ended up getting it, but I don't think I ever really played it. So maybe I traded it in or something. But I know that game is so expensive now. Like, it's so rare that I'm just like, man, it's one of those times where, like, man, I wish I would have held on to my game. And that, it's things like that. I had GameCube games like Metroid Prime, Wind Waker, probably a couple others that all those games are so hard to get, and some of my Super Nintendo games. So I just think to myself, like, that's why I keep all my games now. My physical games. I like the physical games because growing up as a kid, I had so many awesome games that I just don't have anymore as I've grown up. And so I don't want to experience that again. So, but man, I don't know. Suikoden seems really cool though. And I never realized that the big thing with that franchise is there's just hundreds of, like, there's like over 100 characters, a huge cast of characters that you get to work with. So I don't know. If they brought it back, I might be inclined to give it a go. So who knows? I don't know. What do you guys think? What do you think's coming from Konami outside of the big franchises? Like I said, my bet's on Suikoden, but I guess we'll see at Tokyo Game Show. And now let's talk into Halo. Let's jump into that. And this whole Halo Infinite controversy. And I'll preface that I'm not 100% up to speed, but I did, do a little bit of research on this. And I think I got the highlights, the bullet points. So we'll walk through that. But I am a big Halo fan. I love Halo. Fell in love with the franchise in the original Xbox days. Have every single Halo game, including Halo Infinite, physical copy. I did buy that when it was on sale. And this franchise, I think, means a lot to me. And I think it's such a wonderful franchise, especially the older games from Bungie. And truly did a lot for, like, they put first-person shooters on consoles. So, just wanted to preface that before we dive into this. I've played Halo Infinite, played the campaign. I jumped into the multiplayer very briefly when it first came out. I don't consistently play Halo Infinite multiplayer. So again, want to preface that before anyone jumps down my throat. So, the news. Here's the rub. So 343 came out with some news of content delays and shared their roadmap for Halo Infinite through July of next year. The biggest items are campaign co-op has been pushed back to November. This was previously targeting August of this year. The Forge beta was also pushed back to November, and this was previously scheduled for September, I think kind of right around the time this podcast goes live. Season 3 was delayed to March of 2023 for when that starts. And then split screen couch co-op, which was previously announced, has been canceled. And then VGC also reported that 343 said they are reallocating studio resources to, quote, in order to improve and accelerate ongoing live service development and to better address player feedback and quality of life updates, end quote. And I got their roadmap pulled up here. And it's, I have to say, it's kind of underwhelming if I'm looking at it. So let's see, season 2, I guess. So from November 8th to March 7th, it's got the Forge beta, campaign co-op via network and mission replay, a free 30-tier battle pass, and then 2 new maps. And then there's obviously some match XP beta. I don't know what that is. New game mode, a January event, quality of life improvements, again, whatever that means, and a December event. And then for the Season 3, which is March 7th to June 27th. One new map, two new maps, Arena and Big Team Battle. One new weapon, new equipment, the Shroud screen, so one new equipment. 100-tier battle pass, custom games browser, new narrative event, Forge beta updates, in-game reporting, two new game modes, and then a new Fracture event. So a couple events, stuff like that, So I don't know. I look at this roadmap, and I've got to say, it seems pretty bare, very minimal for multiplayer content compared to other like big multiplayer game roadmaps I've seen. And like I don't know, the fact that you're getting mission replay and you're advertising that as a feature, like co-op and mission replay in your roadmap, I think is laughable. Genuinely laughable. New maps, I expect. Forge beta, I think a lot of people are looking forward to. And from people that have had early access to it, I'll give them credit because I think they're doing some really cool things. Like they're giving creators an amazing set of tools and people are doing some really crazy stuff with it. Like I think someone remade PT in Forge, which is just wild. But so that's cool, albeit late. But some of this other stuff, like some of the events, okay, but like a new game mode, I don't know, Match XP beta. We're a year into this game. What are you still doing beta stuff for? I don't understand. And again, this is me not being heavily invested into the multiplayer components of this game. So if you understand it, please write in. Let me know what's going on here. And then the season 3, like one new weapon, one new equipment, one event. Like I don't know. It just seems pretty bare minimum. And like when you compare that to Call of Duty's Last Stand season that they just announced, which I've got that one. Let me pull that up. It is right here. Yeah, so it's the Last Stand. And so just on this season, and their kind of infographic here, in the Warzone, you have Operation Last Call. You've got new features. Let's see. There's some updates to some of the maps. I don't know what some of this stuff means, I'll be honest. And then new supply box, UAV kill streak, personal supply box, Doomsday Station, Rage Serum. So some new items there. A new zombies experience. And then over in multiplayer, you got 2 new maps, 4 new operators, 5 new weapons, a couple of different new bundles and tracer packs and stuff like that. I don't know. It just seems like there's way more content here when I look at the Call of Duty one. That's just for one of their seasons, not 2 different seasons. So it just seems pretty bare bones from what I'm looking at here. Now, that aside, though, I think what really stands out to me is the co-op and Forge stuff. Because these have always been staples to the Halo series. They've always been a part of the games when they launched back in the day with Bungie. When they introduced Forge, that was always there going on. And then co-op, I mean, couch co-op especially, that was really big back in the day and has been in every Halo game up until I think it was Halo 5. And that's when campaign co-op was missing from Halo 5 when it launched. And that was a pretty big deal. And 343 had promised that down the line it would be there, and their next game would have it at launch. That was the promise. But clearly 343 didn't learn from that, and that feature did not launch. But that's just a staple to the series. Now I understand that couch co-op specifically is, probably not used these days. Network co-op is going to be significantly more used, but just the fact that that isn't even there at launch, that just blows my mind. And so on top of that, though, my understanding too is that there are even game modes missing from launch. Like free-for-all, for example, I think was only available in custom games, but you can't matchmake a free-for-all game. Like what? That's like basic. That's Slayer. Back in the day, that was just like that's Slayer, not Team Slayer. Slayer. That's like the original basic game mode, and that's like you can't even matchmake to that. Like I don't understand what you're doing over there. And I also think I remember a little bit of controversy around the progression of the the first season's like battle pass, and so I think they had to make some adjustments on that because players just weren't fond of it and the rewards that they were getting, and so I think they've had to adjust that as that. And like my question is like, what's going on here? What are they doing? Halo is the flagship title for Xbox, right? And I put flagship title in quotes because that's their words. It's plastered everywhere, and everyone associates Halo with Xbox. Yet, since 343 has taken over, they've just dropped the ball. And I feel like they've failed spectacularly to deliver games up to the Halo standard that we've all come to love and expect that we got from Bungie. So like Halo 4, I thought that game was okay. I think the multiplayer, I think unanimously everyone's like, nah, this ain't it, dude. But the campaign, I think, was fine. And I think a lot of people, myself included, could kind of see, okay, this is kind of where we're going with the story. And, I liked Halo 4, though. And I thought it was kind of the start of this new storyline that they were going to take, albeit a very interesting direction. We had the Protheans, I think they were, is the main enemies, and it's like, okay, I can live with this. I'm on board. I want to see what you're doing. I want to see where this is going. Then Halo 5 comes out, and that campaign is not good. Albeit, I think they had some gameplay improvements in some of the campaign sections. I think were much better in terms of design and more open and more classic Halo. But the story was awful. And I don't even know how you go from Halo 4 to Halo 5 cohesively in a storyline. Like, okay, all of a sudden, Master Chief's the bad guy, and there's all these new Spartans that are now chasing him. And the way they advertised and marketed this game in terms of like, the one Spartan dude who's going after Master Chief versus Chief, and it was like this one-on-one battle, and it, like, again, is Master Chief the bad guy, and we're gonna go find him. You're playing this guy, and it's just, what were they doing? And then, but I will say that the light to that game was the multiplayer. So at launch, it wasn't that great. In the big team battle, I forget what it was called, but had some problems. But apparently, they've turned that around, right? The multiplayer component on that section, they've turned it around, and it is actually pretty good. Now we have Halo Infinite, which I think has some cool ideas from a single player campaign perspective with the open world and some of the side missions and the progression mechanics in there. I think there's some great ideas there, albeit it was very samey kind of throughout that campaign. And the story of it was fine, but I think when you look at these three games, essentially Halo 4, 5, and 6, I don't understand how each game's story feeds into I don't understand this overarching story across all of them. Like, I feel like I'm missing something. And I think there's some lore in there, but it just doesn't seem cohesive. And I shouldn't have to read a book to understand how each game's story feeds into the next, outside of the whole debacle with Cortana. But like all of a sudden, tons of Spartans are around. Random enemies show up in each game, and they're all different. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand what you're doing here. And then this was even after delays for Halo Infinite and just not delivering the quality. And then we obviously know what's going on with the multiplayer. And the multiplayer is free to play, so you got that. And so I understand the drive to turn Halo multiplayer into live service, given that it's free to play. Like, it makes sense, right? It's not tied to Game Pass. It's its own thing. I understand that. But to make that your focus while not delivering on basic core features of the game, I don't understand. That just doesn't resonate with me. It doesn't make sense. And as I mentioned too, with the couch co-op thing, I get that it's for a smaller player base. But I think what a lot of what folks are upset about this is that one, network co-op is delayed. Again, a feature that should have been there at launch. Let's be real there. But back in Halo 5 days, they promised that this feature would be included in the next game. And that's just another promise undelivered. So, I don't know. If you look at this history with Halo 4, Halo 5, Halo Infinite, and kind of the debacles of Halo 5, the debacles of Halo Infinite, and the way they're handling the game, you've got to ask, where does the buck stop? Is it 343 leadership? Is it Xbox and their management team? Where can we get answers? Now, I think it's probably a little of both here. I think that the leadership of 343, I think you have to look at them first and say, what are y'all doing? Now, I've heard that 343 relies on a lot of contract workers. There's a lot of folks kind of coming, in and out of the studio. And I'm sure, COVID and remote work has impacted that as well. And I have to imagine that with so many people coming and going and all these contract workers, that's got to impact your development process and your timelines. I can understand that, which begs the question, should you continue to use contract workers or just get like a full-time employees? People obviously would want to work at 343 and work on Halo. So, I mean, you have a selling point. But this has also been pretty consistent for 343. We just went through their games. And that's really over the last decade. I think, because I think Halo 4 came out in 2012? So maybe it was 2012. I'm going to look that up real quick. Hold on. Okay, yeah, it was 2012, November 6th, 2012. So over the last decade, 3 Halo games, and not really there in terms of delivering quality Halo experiences. So I think you got to look there. But I also think Xbox is partly to blame here. Like, you got to ask them, how could you let this happen to your flagship franchise? Halo, the way I see Halo these days is it's this hollow shell of what it used to be. I mean, Halo was big during the 360 days. Yeah, man, I just remember Halo 3, the hype around Halo 3, what that game did in terms of multiplayer, the campaign finale, and I think their tagline was like "Finish the fight." Like, so good. Oh my gosh, everything about that game was amazing. And then they continued with Halo 3 ODST and introduced, this new idea with their campaign and the ODST soldiers and all that. That was awesome. And then that also introduced, gosh, what was that? Like the firefight mode, I think it was, where you're fighting waves of enemies. Man, me and one of my college buddies, we played the crap out of that, just fighting waves. That was so much fun. And then Halo Reach, which at the time when Halo Reach came out, I wasn't really feeling it. Like the story, I didn't like the idea of getting away from Master Chief, but looking back, I think Halo Reach is probably my favorite of all the Halos. Like, that is such a great story. Great storyline leading up to the events of the first Halo. Like, wow, like the fall of Reach and all that stuff. Like, so good. Such good games. And we just have not had that same level of success with this franchise, I feel like, since Bungie, hung up the reins on Halo and then, moved to Destiny. And now we just have this hollow version of Halo where we get, I hate to say it, but subpar stories that don't seem to connect between games, missing content, and then, this seemingly turned live service multiplayer, which I can understand that shift, but this this Halo, the Halo multiplayer experience that is just not up to par, not where it should be. And so it's just this hollow shell. That's the best way I can put it. Because is this what we can expect from Halo going forward? If so, like, then is it really still the flagship title for Xbox? Now, the other thought I have on this is that is this what we can expect in a Game Pass focused Xbox? Again, putting it back on Xbox, is this what we can expect? Because Game Pass is their focus from Xbox. And will we see this to their other, first party flagship franchises? Maybe like Forza, Gears. Maybe even leak into some of the Bethesda titles like Wolfenstein, Skyrim, or not Skyrim, Elder Scrolls, Fallout. Those things. Now, I'm going to make a comparison here to Disney and Disney Plus. Because what Disney's done to Marvel and Star Wars with Disney Plus, those Marvel and Star Wars are now just content fodder for the subscription service. And it's almost like those properties are just they're hollow shells of what they used to mean. And I think there's a lot of folks out there that, like, in the from Marvel's perspective, I think everything after Endgame and going into whatever their Phase 4 and onward, because Phase 4 and onward has focused a lot on Disney Plus TV shows, it's just not the same. And now it's like you got movies and the TV shows, and if you aren't up to snuff with all of that content, then you're just missing things, because it's like they take this semi-cohesive storyline, shatter it into 100 pieces, and then spread that throughout their Disney Plus content and a few movies. And if you're missing some of those pieces, you're kind of out of the loop. But there's so many pieces there that it's so hard to keep up, because it's all just there for content fodder. And then with Star Wars, obviously after the new trilogy, which we all kind of know how that went, with Disney Plus, I mean, they're just pumping out shows. I mean, you have The Mandalorian, which I think is great. And then, then they decided to do Boba Fett, which in my opinion was not that great. It was very, very boring, kind of watered down that character, that beloved character, in my opinion. And then they had Obi-Wan, which had its moments, I will say, but it definitely has its downside to that. Now we're getting the new Andor show, and I know we've got a bunch of other shows, and it's just constant fodder. And this doesn't even include what they're doing with the animated shows like Bad Batch. And then they also did, what was it? The new season of Clone Wars, which that was phenomenal, by the way. That was season 7 of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the animated series. Fucking great. That was good shit. That was really good shit right there. That was awesome. And then I know, the Ahsoka series. So they're just these. It's not even. It doesn't even feel like these properties are what they used to be and what they used to mean, and they're just used as fodder to put up content on the subscription service. And so, is that going to happen with Xbox's first-party titles like Halo with Game Pass, to where they just become hollow shells of themselves to feed content into the subscription service? That's my fear, and that's the question I pose out there. Now, I've talked many times about the effect of Game Pass, what it could mean for Xbox game development, now that they're not focused on sales, because I've said this, Xbox does not care about game sales. It's all about putting content to booster their subscription numbers on Game Pass. That's the idea. So they're making games for Game Pass. And so when you're doing that, and then you have this finite pool of subscription money to go around for all your studios, it's likely that they'll need to develop for that and then make up money elsewhere, which means live service and microtransaction games. That's going to be their focus. So games are no longer will be primarily developed to just have, a good story or this great narrative driven experience. It'll be about watered down and how can we get, more money in through microtransactions and season passes and all this stuff. That's where I think it's going, and what I think will happen if that this path is continued down. I've talked about that before. But seeing what we're seeing with Halo, this kind of seems to be the focus. Like, why focus on that single player experience and the quality when you can just shit out a live service model and focus on monetization? With like, look at that roadmap. Seriously, pull it up. Why focus on that stuff when you can just focus on the stuff that's going to make you money? You know what I mean? Now, I know there are a lot of folks out there that really enjoy the multiplayer, and I've heard that the gameplay is great. I got to give them credit there. I think they've really nailed some stuff down and really got the multiplayer gameplay in a pretty good spot with Halo Infinite. But I don't think you can deny what's happened to Halo over this last decade and just how unacceptable it is. Like, we have basic features missing and things are consistently delayed. And then when they do come out, it's subpar. I mean, when's it time? Now, there are some people out there that say, I think it's time for 343 to throw in the towel and stop, like, give Halo to a different studio. And I've seen kind of both sides on Twitter, online, stuff like that. And I saw someone post this on Twitter, and he said, quote, "People who want Halo taken away from 343 Industries are really just letting emotion run wild with their thought process. Do you actually want what's best for Halo, or are you just looking for are you just looking for blood?" End quote. And then Tom Henderson, who's a big industry games leaker, he replied and said, "I think everyone wants what's best for Halo. And to be honest, you can look at both sides of it. Yes, 343 could redeem itself on the next game, or they could repeat the cycle. The same goes for a new team coming on board. It could be good or it could be crap." I think it's a great response. And I think it's well said. But my thing is like, okay, do you want to give 343 another chance? We've had 3 games. They've had 10 years. Like, are we going to keep this cycle of like, oh, it'll be better in the next game? Guess what, guys? It's going to be a long time before we see another Halo game. Because guess what? Halo Infinite, the multiplayer, is live service. They want that thing chugging along for the next 5 years. So, you think they're going to be working on another Halo game anytime soon? No. They're going to be working on the live service component of Halo Infinite. We're not going to see a Halo game for a while. This is it, folks. So, I don't know what you're waiting for. I don't think we're getting one for a long time. Long time. This is what happens when you move into live service games. They're meant to live on for a long time. Look at Grand Theft Auto Online. Still don't think we're getting GTA 6 anytime soon. So I don't know what you'd be waiting for. Genuinely speaking, I don't know what you'd be waiting for. But I see a lot of that. And people are like, oh, just give them another chance. 343, give them another chance. They've had their chances. We've seen 3 different games from them. Do you really think it's going to turn around on the next one? Whenever that is, 5-6 years down the road? I don't think so. I'm just being honest here. I genuinely don't think so. And I think Xbox has to say, okay, we got to, like, are you just going to let this be a watered down hollow shell of itself? Or can we bring Halo back to its former glory? I'd love to see it. But again, let me know your thoughts. I think this is an interesting topic. And certainly, I'm sure there's a lot of passionate people out there. So feel free, write in. Let me know what you think about this whole Halo situation. But I personally, if I were to sum up my thoughts, I think it's a crying shame what they're putting out for content. I think it's a shame that this game launched in the state that it did, and I think it's inexcusable to launch without core basic features. Oh, and Halo's not the only franchise that seems to be doing this. I know Call of Duty's done it. I know there are plenty of other franchises and games out there that launch. Battlefield that launch without basic features. Like I think Battlefield 2042 launched without where you can see your kills and deaths. They launched without that menu. It's like, really? Like that is basic shit. And you're launching without that? It doesn't make sense. Oh my gosh. So I think it's inexcusable. And personally, I want to see someone else give it a go. Like, again, yeah, could be good, could be bad. I understand that, it's a coin toss, but I think we know what we're getting from 343. They've had their chance, they've had their time, they've had their chances with this. They've underdelivered. So let's see what someone else can do. And it's not like you could give, say, a different studio, Halo, go work on a new Halo game. 343, maintain the live service. There. Oh, and this also doesn't include, one thing I forgot to mention too, we had Halo 4, Halo 5. We also had the Master Chief Collection, that's its own debacle. That was just a fumble at the goal line. And they really botched that. Though they've turned it around, but still they botched that on top of Halo. So 4 Halo games in the last decade, all just... Halo 4 would probably be the best out of all these ones. But man, not good. So I say give someone else a go. Let someone else try it out. What's the worst that could happen? You get another shit game? Great. We've had a decade of that. No loss. So now let's move into Xbox's statement about Call of Duty. So, friend of the show, Cotton, who we've had on, he tagged me in this Charlie Intel tweet showing Xbox's statement about Call of Duty coming to Game Pass. And so Phil Spencer, he came out and officially confirmed plans to bring Call of Duty, Diablo, and Overwatch franchises to Xbox Game Pass upon completion of the acquisition deal. So, as reported by VGC, they do some good shit over there. So that's why I keep using their stuff here. They say, quote, "We are expanding choice in 2 ways, through the creation of Game Pass, which gives players a subscription option, and by bringing more games to mobile platforms, including through our cloud game streaming technology," he said in a statement published on Thursday. "Subscription services like Game Pass make gaming more affordable and help players from all over the world find their next favorite game. Game Pass empowers developers to bring more games to more players, not fewer. We intend to make Activision Blizzard's much-loved library of games, including Overwatch, Diablo, and Call of Duty, available in Game Pass and grow those gaming communities. By delivering even more value to players, we hope to continue growing Game Pass, extending its appeal to mobile phones and any connected device." End quote. So in reading that, 3 things kind of stick out to me. First, that's a lot of content and value. I know a lot of people love to throw out, "Oh, Game Pass is the best value in gaming." And okay, got it. We've heard that. But that is a lot of value, I would say. If all the Call of Duty games, which would be over 20, come to Game Pass, that's a lot of additional content you're bringing to your library. And then, you've got the Diablo games, and then Overwatch. I mean, that's huge. Huge. And there's some other Activision games I'm sure they'd throw up on there. Maybe like the Tony Hawk series, with Crash Bandicoot, Spyro. There's lots of games that I think they'd be bringing and adding that value. But I think what's exciting about this, specifically about Call of Duty, is having some of those older titles potentially being repopulated again with players. And I'd love to just relive some of my favorite memories from Call of Duty World at War. That multiplayer. Like, that is my favorite multiplayer. Like, Modern Warfare 2 was a ton of fun. And I understand why that's a lot of people's favorites. I certainly enjoyed it. Black Ops 1, I really like that one. That's probably up there in my top 3. And then Black Ops 2, I get that as well. Like, that's for a lot of people, especially in the competitive scene, I think Black Ops 2 was like the pinnacle of multiplayer there. But for me, like, those games are all great, and I loved those ones. Tons of fun. I put probably hundreds of hours into those games. But World at War was just, I have such fond memories of that game. And I just loved because this was pre all of what we know as Call of Duty multiplayer today. In that it was still very new. And since it was set in World War II, I played a lot of hardcore team deathmatch. And I just felt like it really worked really well because you could play a little slower. The maps, you could kind of hide in the maps. And I don't know, there's just something really, really fun about it. I liked the weapons. I think the maps were cool. It was just a really good time. And I just enjoyed kind of taking my time and playing hardcore team deathmatch in World at War. Like, it was just so, I don't know, man. I loved it. So I'd love to go back and play some of those. I'd love to go back and play Black Ops 1. Modern Warfare 2 would be fun. Modern Warfare 3 would be fun. So it'd just be fun to see those games repopulated again. And I would absolutely hop back in and play some of those. So I like that idea. The second thing that sticks out to me is that, again, this reiterates that these games will stay on PlayStation. So the question is, will these games draw more to the subscription service and take players away from PlayStation? And as we've discussed previously, I think some will definitely jump ship. But we also know it's not going to be enough to warrant full exclusivity on Xbox, or I think really make a huge dent on the PlayStation ecosystem, as well as a huge bolster to Game Pass in terms of new subscribers from PlayStation. But I could be wrong there. Could be wrong. I think what's more interesting about this is that, what does this do to Call of Duty sales? Call of Duty is always the top selling game every year. We know Xbox doesn't care about sales. And so if Activision is now losing, let's say, all of their Xbox sales, which I think, as we discussed before, is approximately 40% of console sales. So if they lose that, which is not going to be all 40%, but just bear with me here, and they lose some of their PlayStation sales, how does that affect the development and monetization of the game? We already talked about Halo, and I've already mentioned it multiple times. I'm probably beating this over your head, but with that finite pool of subscription money, is that enough? Or will we see a watered down version of future version of Call of Duty, like we've seen with Halo? It's all related, folks. That's kind of my question here. Now, I know they've got Warzone. Warzone 2 is coming, and I know they make billions in microtransactions over there, and even in their core titles. And I know they'll still continue to get that revenue. So they've got that going for us. But now that Microsoft's going to step in from management style, they're not going to get the same revenue from game sales as they do. Does that loss of revenue impact them and change how they develop the game? That's my question. I don't know the answer to that. I have to think that they're still going to have plenty of cash flow to continue to do what they do and deliver the quality titles, but we shall see. And I think we'll see probably sooner than later. Because again, remember, they're supposed to be taking 2023 off of Call of Duty. And I have to imagine by that time, the deal will have gone through, and it'll be Activision and Xbox kind of planning what to do with the franchise. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens here. Now, the third thing that sticks out to me is the statement, extending its appeal to mobile phones and any connected device. And I think this is key. I think this clearly conveys their intent to get Game Pass on any and every platform. I've long stood the idea, and not publicly, on the internet, but I've long thought that Xbox's end goal is to get Game Pass everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I also mean PlayStation and Switch. They want it on every platform. That's the end goal. And I've also thought that I think they'll eventually get out of the hardware business and Game Pass will be the Xbox platform. So they're not necessarily going to be developing a literal platform, hardware, maybe still controllers, but rather have Game Pass, the application, be the platform. So we've already seen them partner with Samsung, where you can stream Game Pass directly to the TV through their xCloud. And we know they're working on a streaming stick like a Roku for Game Pass, to where you just plug it into the TV, can access Game Pass that way through xCloud. So I don't think it's far-fetched to say that they're going to put Game Pass or try to put Game Pass on PlayStation and Switch. I definitely think that's in the cards at some point. Now, PlayStation will clearly be the last, but I could see a world where a version of Game Pass lives on Switch. And maybe it's just their first or second party games. Because remember, Xbox Game Pass already has different libraries between Xbox console and PC Game Pass. So why not a Switch version or a PlayStation version, where the libraries are just slightly different, but there is a lot of overlap. So I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens here in this space, because I think, I don't know, man, just the way they talk about Game Pass, who's to say? Who's to say that's not the angle? And I think it's really interesting. Again, I've already talked about my thoughts on Game Pass, the impact of Game Pass on the industry and all that stuff. I don't want to dive into that, but this is pretty big news, I would say. And again, it just kind of tells us what they're planning to do with Game Pass, what their vision is for the service. But I mean, what do you guys think? Would you want to see Game Pass on Switch or even PlayStation? I think the big hurdle that you got to come over with getting it onto, the Switch or the PlayStation is, how does that impact like third-party game sales? How does that impact sales of those games? Like, let's say Call of Duty on PlayStation. Would Call of Duty be in a Game Pass version on PlayStation? I don't know. And I think the Call of Duty sales thing is big to keep an eye on too, because once that goes on Game Pass, you have to imagine they're not selling nearly as many copies of that game. So does putting it on, does that make up the difference? I don't know. Will it expand their reach and increase their microtransaction revenues? Possibly. And maybe that's the end goal here. Maybe that's the idea. But I don't know. I'm very weary and cautious of this path, but I do like the idea of having old Call of Duty titles repopulated. So we'll see what happens here when it all comes to fruition. But I think, one of the other things I was thinking with this is, as it relates to Game Pass, because I see a lot of people talk about, and they always boast about, X millions number of players have played said game. Or even take the Lord of the Rings show that just launched on Amazon, because they said they reached 25 million viewers on the first day, which is a huge number, don't get me wrong. But what does that mean? What I don't understand is, how does that high number equate to dollars? Unless you're doing in-game advertising, in-game monetization when it comes to video games. What does that mean? So if you have a game, let's use like Psychonauts 2, just throwing a game out there, like a single player game that reached, let's say, 5 million players. Okay. You're not selling 5 million copies. So how are you making money? And even in the statement, right, Phil Spencer talks about having these games reach more players. That's the idea, right? Well, if a game isn't already microtransaction or monetize in some other fashion, what does it, and besides the fact that the devs want, of course, they always want as many people to play their games as possible, right? That's clear. But besides that desire, what does it even mean to have your game reach millions of players if you're not making money off of that at the end of the day? Outside, unless they've structured their deals with these developers to say, on a per player basis, you're making, some sort of royalty or something like that. That means something. Otherwise, I don't know what it means. So again, maybe I'm missing something here, but I don't understand when people boast that, oh, Forza reached 20 million users. Okay. What does that mean in dollars? Because you could have a free to play game reach X amount of users, but if you're not making money off of it, what's the point? And that's where I think I'm missing something, where I don't understand the end goal here is. Even with some subscription services, like, okay, your show reached, 25 million viewers. That's great. But what does that mean? People aren't buying anything. They're just, yeah, okay, so that means you have at least 25 million subscribers for that 1 month, assuming, you're assuming they're going to maintain their subscription. I don't know. Hopefully you guys kind of see what I'm going with this, but because I feel like I'm missing something to where I don't know what you're boasting and how this equates to dollars. Because the bottom line is these companies need to make money. So I digress on that, but I just kind of wanted to share that on my last thought when we talk about these and the way, bringing more games to more players. What does that mean from a dollar sense on the developer side? But that's all I got for you guys on this episode of the podcast. This Xbox focused episode on the podcast with Halo, Game Pass, Call of Duty, Activision, all the good stuff. I do think I do want to reach out to the folks over at Xbox Tavern to get them on the show, talk a little more about Xbox. I would love to kind of pick their brains about Game Pass and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to try to work on setting that up, see if I can find it in my schedule, because I'd love to talk to those guys. And you can check out their website. I think their website is xboxtavern.com. They do a bunch of reviews over there. I've got some content. They have their own podcast and stuff. So I think we'll try to get them on the show here soon. Lots going on in the Xbox world. But of course, let me know what you guys think about these topics, the state of Xbox, Halo Infinite, my show. Let me know down in the comments below. Feel free to write into the show over on Locals, the Gamecite Chronicles.locals.com, or hit me up on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. Hope you guys have an awesome week. Play lots of video games. Stay safe out there. We're in the final days of summer. Hope you guys have an awesome Labor Day weekend. I forgot to mention that at the top of the show. It's Labor Day weekend. So enjoy that and have some fun time with the families if you can. We'll talk next week. So until next time, I'm Bonfire, and I will see you online.